Statement, Secretary of State for Education, Gavin Williamson.
With permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to make a statement regarding the wider opening of nurseries, schools and colleges as part of our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It is now over 2.5 months since we asked schools, further education colleges and nurseries to remain open only for vulnerable children and those of critical workers. I continue to be immensely grateful for the way that our teachers and parents have responded to these challenging circumstances. I'd also like to say a very big thank you to all those working in education, childcare and children's social care for the huge efforts that they're making on a daily basis to support families and make sure our children don't miss out on their education. We all know how important it is for children and young people to be in education and childcare, and it is vital that we get them back there as soon as the scientific advice indicates that we can. I'm very pleased that last week we were able to take the first cautious step towards that. As the Prime Minister confirmed on the 28th of May, the government's 5 tests are being met, and we're beginning to ease the lockdown restrictions across England. Based on all the evidence, this means that nurseries and other early year providers, including childminders, have been able to welcome back children of all ages. Pupils in reception, Year 1 and Year 6, have been returning in smaller class sizes, alongside the children of critical workers and vulnerable children of all ages, who continue to be able to attend. Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, 97% of schools that submitted data to the Department for Education were open at the end of last week. Last week, we saw the number of primaries taking nursery reception Year 1 or Year 6 pupils steadily rise as part of a phased, cautious, wider reopening of schools. By the end of the week, more than half of primary schools were taking pupils from these year groups, and as of yesterday, that had risen to over 70% of primaries that had responded. I know that schools need time to put in place the strict protective measures we have asked for, and we continue to work with the sector to make sure that any schools experiencing difficulties are supported to open more widely as soon as it is possible. Some schools in areas such as the North West are concerned about local rates of transmission. I can assure them that SAGE's estimate for the whole of the UK is below 1. If robust data shows that local action needs to be taken, we will not hesitate to do so, but we are not in that position. I know you'll be as impressed as I have been by the work and efforts of head teachers, teachers and childcare staff who are finding ways to make the necessary changes while still ensuring schools and nurseries are a welcoming place for children, as well as reassuring families who may be worried about sending their children back. The next step of our phased approach will enable secondary schools and colleges to provide some face-to-face support from the 15th of June for Years 10 and Years 12, and 16 to 19 students in the first year of a 2-year study programme who are due to take key exams next year. This is such a critical time for those students, and this extra support will be in addition to their remote education, which will continue to be the main method of education for them this term. As only a quarter of this cohort will be able to attend at any one time in order to limit the risk of transmission. Children of critical workers and vulnerable children in all secondary year groups will continue to be able to attend full-time. We have published guidance for secondary schools and ensured schools have the flexibility to decide how they want to use face-to-face support in the best interest of their pupils. Since the announcement of our proposals on the 10th of May, my department has published detailed guidance for settings on how to prepare. This includes planning guides for early years providers and for primary schools, and for further guidance for secondary schools and colleges as well. Crucially, we have provided detailed guidance on the protective measures that schools and other settings need to take to reduce the risk of transmission. This includes restricting class sizes, limiting mixing between groups, and encouraging regular hand washing and frequent cleaning. This advice was developed in close consultation with Public Health England. The safety of our children, young people and staff remains my top priority. That's why all staff and children, including the under 5s, will have access to testing if they develop symptoms of coronavirus. This will enable the right response where a case is confirmed, including using a test and trace approach to rapidly identify people most at risk of having been exposed to the virus so that they can take action too. We continue to follow the best scientific advice and believe that this cautious, phased return is the most sensible course of action to take. While we are not able to welcome all primary children back for a full month before the summer, we continue to work with the sector on the next steps, where we'd like to see schools who have the capacity to bring back more children in those smaller class sizes, to do so if they are able to do before the summer holidays. We will be working to bring all children back to school in September. I know students who are due to take exams in 2021 will have experienced considerable disruption to their education this year, and we are committed to doing all we can to minimise the effects of this. Exams will take place next year, and we're working with Ofqual and the exam boards on our approach to these. While these are the first steps, they are the best way to ensure all children can get back into the classroom as soon as possible. I want to end by thanking the childcare, school and FE staff who have gone above and beyond over the past 8 weeks, and who are now working so incredibly hard to welcome our children and young people back, while also continuing to support those who remain at home. I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Secretary of State Rebecca Long-Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Secretary for advance sight of his statement, and I join him in thanking parents and all those working in education and childcare at this difficult time. For weeks, head teachers, education unions, school staff and many parents have warned that the plan to open whole primary schools before the summer was simply impractical while implementing social distancing safely. So I welcome the Secretary's decision to roll back from that today. However, I must state my dismay at the way this has been handled. If the government had brought together everyone involved in implementing these plans from the outset and really taken on board what they had to say, they would not be in the situation of having to roll back at all. But what's done is done. And now it is imperative the government looks ahead to what the education system needs over the coming months and years. Children and young people's education and well-being will have been impacted cruelly by such a prolonged period away from school, their friends and the situation at home may have been extremely stressful. Indeed, the Children's Commissioner has said to me today, "The risk I am most concerned about is that of a generation of children losing over 6 months of formal education, socialising with friends and structured routine. I'm also concerned about a deepening education disadvantage gap that could leave millions of children without education they need to progress in life. The government need to face up to the scale of damage this is doing to children and scale up their response. The starting point for this needs to be the rapid action to support summer schemes for this summer. Like the Commissioner, I believe a crisis in education and children's attainment and well-being could come at us incredibly quickly if we do not step in and mitigate it now. There needs to be a national plan for education. So will the Secretary commit today to bringing together children's organisations, trade unions, parents' associations, health and psychological experts, Ofqual, school leaders and head teachers to develop that plan? Of course,